Welcome to Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I'm Brandon Strange of Sports Map Houston. He is Joel Blank of ESPN 97.5, 92.5. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe. Joel, I want to talk some Rockets with you. Max Kellerman made a comment this week on his show, and with the Lakers on the ropes right now, I thought it was an interesting time to talk about that. They were discussing Chris Paul's role as a leader on this Phoenix Suns team, and they were talking about how Chris Paul had not made it to a conference finals. And the last time he did, it wasn't really Chris Paul's team. It was a James Harden, Mike D'Antoni, Daryl Morey team. So it really seemed dismissive of Chris Paul's role on that 2018 Rockets team. I want to get your thoughts after hearing that. What do you think about that statement?
I think he's completely off base looking for clicks, and that's what he normally does as a part of that show and most things that he puts out there these days. And basically, as a whole, ESPN started to head that route, which is disturbing. But when you look at what Chris Paul's body of work is, well, then what was he in Oklahoma City? Because without Chris Paul, that team doesn't even make the playoffs, let alone take the Rockets to 7 games. And if you want to dig a little deeper, Brandon, truly when you look at the last 2 Rockets Western Conference Finals appearances or chances to win a championship, that 18 team, the bigger problem wasn't how Chris Paul played, because we all know in Rockets lore it'll go down as the hamstring away from title contenders. Chris Paul was such a factor that it bothered James Harden enough that became the major issue. It wasn't about the team and how far they could go. It seemed to be more about James Harden having a problem with Chris Paul having such a predominant role. We heard the stories after he left about how James didn't like to be talked to and coached up by a player he thought he was better than, and that was an issue. You go back even further to the last time before that when it was Dwight Howard and James Harden. Dwight Howard in Game 1 got the Rockets to a double-digit lead of 16 points before he tweaked his knee. He played his tail off. But you know what? James Harden didn't like it, and James Harden tried to do more, so much so that he broke a record for in a single game the amount of turnovers a guy can have. And that, again, became an issue, and James had to have him also lead. So I don't think it's fair to ever say that Chris Paul didn't lead a team. It's how much the other players around him, including the superstars, allowed him to lead the team for the betterment of the team, not the selfishness of individuals.
Well, I think if I was in front of Max Kellerman during this conversation, I would have just made one point, and that was that after CP3 got injured in that series, the Rockets did not win another game. Joel, I want to talk to you some more about some of this, what I feel is revisionist history that kind of happens with the Rockets and kind of that 2018 team. Before we do that, give us a word from Fitz Roofing.
Well, we love the people at Fitz Roofing. They're dedicated to the people of Houston. And it's not just roofing issues, but if you do have a roofing issue, a leaky roof, or you want to put a new roof on your business or your house, they're the only team to call. They also do home repairs. They put up fences in yards. They do so much. And the biggest thing is they do it starting with a free no obligation inspection, in which it costs you nothing to have them come out and evaluate what you need done. They'll give you an estimate, and then you can decide on what you want to do. But they take care of you. Fitz Roofing, call them today, 832-521-3001. Fitz, making a difference one home at a time.
I want to take a trip down memory lane with you real quick, because to a time before the James Harden trade had happened, Boston media had reported that the Celtics were, quote, strongly advised to avoid James Harden. Miami reportedly didn't want to trade away Tyler Hero for James Harden, and now they're sitting at home just like Boston. Bill Simmons said on a podcast that Brooklyn had, quote, cooled down on Harden because, quote, he presents some problems. And that clearly didn't end up being true, because one of those teams got him and one of those teams is still playing. Do you think, kind of looking back on it, that there's some remorse from some of those guys or some of those teams for a trade that didn't happen?
I think there is, Brandon. And I think what it comes down to when you look at it is the supporting cast in all the situations. The reason why James Harden has flourished is because he doesn't have to be Batman anymore. It's amazing how the narrative and his play changed when you put quality players around him from a standpoint of an entire rotation, not just a sidekick, but actual players that could make shots and create things around him, and also changing the system to better fit those skill sets of those players. Brooklyn is overloaded with talent, so James doesn't have to do as much, and he knows when he does want to pass or he feels like he should pass, he's passing to people that are going to be effective in completing the play. He didn't have that in Houston. He could have had that with Jimmy Butler and some of the guys that they had in Miami. That's Miami's mistake. Boston had enough talent that even if they gave up a Jaylen Brown, would have put enough talent around James to where he would have flourished. But the crazy thing to me is how the narrative has changed from Charles and Shaq to all the national media that said, I can't stand watching him play. He's a selfish player. He doesn't do anything to make anybody around him better. To suddenly Charles saying James is the best offensive player he's ever seen, and that so many people saying that he's so good and it was just misused by Houston. It's crazy how quickly it's all changed.
So, Joel, it begs the question now. You're seeing Paul playing meaningful minutes for his team, James Harden playing meaningful minutes for his team, Clint Capella playing meaningful playoff minutes for his team. So you're seeing all these guys who used to be on that Rockets team going and having success independently. It begs the question, what if this team had stayed together?
Could have been really good, but the only guy that had the answer to that question is the guy that basically proposed all the trades that got rid of him. That's Daryl Morey, and he's not here anymore either, just like those other guys. And he's in the playoffs too with a chance to go far. So what does that tell you overall as a whole? Daryl did what he had to do. Then he did to those guys what he had to do. And now they're all doing what they needed to do in order to still be meaningful contributors on good teams elsewhere. It's a shame if you're a Rockets fan, but it kind of tells you that they underachieved for all that they had for all those years of success here in Houston.